What is going on, everybody? How's everybody doing? Today you got me. I'm by myself. No Nick today. So a little bit of a switch up. Nick is visiting. His family is visiting him right now. So we gave him the day off. But what's going on, y'all? Welcome to Face Mask Fantasy. Happy Thursday. Yeah. What's going on? Today we got it's kind of a retread topic, something that we've been over before. Fantasy football, specifically Dynasty buys. But this is a little caveat to this one. It's going to be people that you should be overpaying for, or you should feel at least comfortable overpaying for. Because we went over Dynasty buys, I think 2 weeks ago at this point now. But it was all guys that you could kind of buy low on. Adam Troutman was on that list. Irv Smith Jr. was on that list, specifically for rebuilds. Kadarius Toney was on that list. If you're talking contenders, Aaron Jones was on that list. Adam Thielen was on that list. Brandon Cooks, Russell Wilson. And then just for anybody, Hunter Renfrow was on that list. Van Jefferson was on that list. Isaiah McKenzie was a sleeper on that list. Miles Sanders, buy low on that list. And then Nick had brought up Josh Palmer, Nico Collins, Keyshawn Vaughn, all buy low guys, but all guys that I still believe are buys right now. But today, we're going over guys that you should be overpaying for, or you should at least, again, feel comfortable overpaying for. Let me adjust my mic a little bit. There we go. What's going on, Harrison? How you doing, man? Deshaun Watson question mark? Yeah, man. Hey, I got a question mark next to Deshaun Watson's name too. The situation is still completely up in the air. There was that report today saying that there are multiple teams that are willing to go out and pay the price for Deshaun Watson, or at least are interested in Deshaun Watson, despite the 22 allegations of sexual assault. They're still out there, unresolved. But there are teams that are still interested. Nick and I talked a little bit about Deshaun Watson last week, and actually last live stream. When he steps on the field, as soon as he steps on the field, he will be a top 6 quarterback again, because he was a top 5 quarterback before all of this stuff popped off. But there's so many question marks surrounding his availability. We don't know if we can rely on him year to year at this point. I mean, he hasn't even served a suspension. He's just been completely out of the league because his own team hasn't been willing to play him, and he has been vocal about not wanting to play for the Texans even before his legal situation popped off. Now, the only comparison for this whole situation, or at least that Nick and I saw when we were going over this earlier in the week, was Michael Vick, who missed 2 full seasons for the Falcons when he went to jail for the dog fighting thing. He went to jail. It wasn't just allegations that he was working his way through and the league didn't know how to handle him. He actually went to jail. And then he came back for the Philadelphia Eagles, and he was a fantasy relevant quarterback again. He was their starting quarterback for a couple of years. 3 years there, I think. And he was good for the first 2 years. He was good in fantasy. Same type of situation with Deshaun Watson. As soon as a team will give him a chance. Excuse me. And maybe multiple teams are vying to give him a chance. And as soon as he steps on the field again, he's going to be a top 6, at least top 8 fantasy quarterback, because he's really good. And again, he was doing what he was doing with one of the worst teams overall from a talent perspective, top to bottom, in the NFL. I mean, they went from playoff contenders with him in the lineup. As soon as they took Deshaun Watson out of the lineup, they're bottom of the barrel, with pretty much the same weapons. I mean, you could say the DeAndre Hopkins trade skewed things a little bit, but he was still getting it done with Brandon Cooks and Will Fuller, who disappeared for a full year. So as soon as he steps on the field, he's going to be a QB1 again. It's just, are you going to have to wait 2 years? Are you going to have to wait 3 years? Is he going to be back as soon as next year? How long is that suspension going to be? I mean, and if this legal situation ends up being worst case scenario for him and he is convicted on the 22-21 allegations, then you're out of a quarterback for the rest. I mean, we can't expect him to play again. All up in the air. Harrison, you traded Zach Wilson and a 23 first for him yesterday. Okay. All right, what's your quarterback room look like? I don't mind that trade. Zach Wilson didn't show me much. I really like his potential weapons moving into 2022. I can't really say much about him. He kind of reminds me of the person that he replaced. His career could go a lot like Sam Darnold. It could go the other way. People were comparing him to Patrick Mahomes light, based on a few throws that he made leading up to the draft process. But that is what it is. All right, so you got Herbert and Deshaun Watson. Assuming Deshaun Watson comes back within the next 2 years, you got to be at the top of your league as far as quarterback tandem. So that looks great for you. You're just going to have to wait it out. But, I mean, if you got Herbert, Zach Wilson is an upgrade from Herbert. The only thing is that 23 first is going to be valuable, and the quarterback landscape next year, as far as rookies coming out, looks real strong. So take that into account. In 2023, 2024, you could end up kind of kicking yourself because you could have gotten more, or you could have given up less. But right now, I don't hate that, as long as you're willing to stay patient. But I mean, Herbert is a great QB1. So I wasn't expecting to talk about Deshaun Watson today, but as always, anything that you guys throw into the chat, we'll have willing to have a discussion about it. But let's continue talking about these quarterbacks here. Guys to overpay for, or be willing, or at least be willing to feel comfortable overpaying for. The first guy on my list is a guy that I feel like everybody is talking about right now, and that's Trey Lance. Report just came out today from Adam Schefter, and it said, and I quote, Trey Lance probably further behind than people realized. Trey Lance is greener than people realize. Trey Lance is going to need more work than people realize. And they have a roster that can win right now. So, the implication being, maybe they're more open to having a stopgap quarterback like Jimmy Garoppolo come back for one more season, considering Trey Lance has only played 19 games at quarterback in college. He only played 19 games at quarterback, and he only played one game in 2020. So he's coming into the league. He was a year removed from playing the position. And while his highlight reel was impressive, his measurables were impressive, really raw prospect. Coming into this league year, he will be 22. So from an age perspective, if you have him on your team, I'm not too worried about them waiting another year for Trey Lance to see the field in a full-time role. I'm not. He's the closest thing to Josh Allen currently in the league. Josh Allen's 6'5", 237 pounds, runs a 4.75 40. Trey Lance is 6'4", 226 pounds, little shorter, little lighter, but runs a little faster. 4.69 40. Is he going to be running through linebackers and D linemen? Maybe not, but he might be able to run around some of them. And he comes with that cannon of an arm. And he has all the raw potential that in the world. And that's why we're comparing him to Josh Allen. If he can unlock that, he could be a Josh Allen level prospect. With this report in mind from Adam Schefter, considering what everybody's pretty much speculating about Trey Lance, he's a buy right now. His weapons are impeccable. They unlocked Deebo Samuel. Brandon Ayuk showed what he can do when he's out of the Shanahan doghouse. They figured out running back to a certain extent. They got Elijah Mitchell there. Kittle is Kittle. They got a ready-made team right now. So if they need to wait another year on Lance, I'm cool with that. And if I can buy this dip or buy Trey Lance from somebody at a little bit of a bargain, factoring in this report, that's a move I want to make. It's a move I want to make. All right, Harrison. Hey, you're welcome, man. And you've been trying to get other people's opinions on the Watson situation. Yeah, man. I mean, the situation's as up in the air as pretty much any situation that I've ever come across. When I was talking to Nick last week, we both came to the conclusion that if you had Deshaun Watson, he was probably a hold. Just because we know how good he is, probably going to play sometime in the future. We just don't know how long that's going to take. But yeah, man, if you can wait, if you have another quarterback like a Davis Mills or somebody, or you can trade into a Davis Mills and just get a stopgap quarterback for 1 year, and then you hope that Deshaun Watson comes back for 2023, maybe serves a suspension in 2023, comes back in 2024. At least you can bridge the gap with the quarterback, and then you have a top 6 quarterback from 2024 onward. So, yeah, I don't hate that trade. I don't hate that trade. If I'm rebuilding, I like it even more. But what do you think about Trey Lance, man? What do you think about Trey Lance? 22 years old. If he needs to sit 1 more year, I'm cool with it. But that's pretty much all I got to say about Trey Lance. That report that came out today was a little bit surprising to me. Wasn't expecting that to come out on the wire. I was really expecting Trey Lance to just hit the ground running this season. But if you can use this report to your advantage, grab him from somebody right now, it's not the worst idea. Still going to be expensive. And that's why I have him in this overpay, guys I'm willing to overpay on list. But he's one of those guys. Yeah, man, I do too. But the next guy on my list is Lamar Jackson. We're just rounding out these QBs. He's the last QB on my list. But he's only 25. And through his first 11 games this year, he was on pace for a career high in passes. 34 passes a game, which is kind of unheard of for him. That's a 549 passes thrown or pass attempts over 17 game extrapolation. That's 148 more passes than in his MVP season. His MVP season was in 2019. He threw 401 passes that season. So he's throwing a lot more. That would mean that he's not going to be running as much, but that's not true either. Through 11 games, he was on pace for 190 rushes, 14 more than his MVP season. He was QB 14 through 11 weeks, QB 8 in points per game. So he's a guy that I would be willing to pay up for, considering it's not a buy low situation just because he got injured. You're going to have to pay up for Lamar Jackson, but he's worth it. He's passing more than ever before. You might think that he was rushing more than ever before and passing more than ever before because he didn't have J.K. Dobbins last year. He didn't have Gus Edwards last year. He didn't have Justice Hill last year. He was relying on Devonta Freeman, Latavius Murray, sometimes Le'Veon Bell, Tyson Williams early in the year. So he was kind of in a do-it-all-himself situation. Yes, you could take it that way. But to me, I'm looking at it like, okay, he's succeeding while passing just as much as most of these other quarterbacks in the league. When we looked at his stats prior to this past season, we looked at it from a fantasy perspective like, this guy's succeeding because he's rushing so much. He's never going to be the passer that some of these other quarterbacks are. This year, he showed that he could be. And he showed that he could come with that rushing floor as well. Rushing floor maybe not as high, but he basically showed me he's a do-it-all this past season. I knew he was always an underrated passer. This season proved it to me. Now I'm willing to go out and buy Lamar Jackson. And I bet you can get him for less right now than you were getting for him at this time last season. So yeah, Lamar Jackson, if you're a QB needy team and you have a bunch of draft capital, maybe some players that other people value that you don't have as high of a rosy outlook on, I would try and go get Lamar Jackson. 25 years old. I mean, the consensus on him is that because he is a rushing quarterback, he will have a little bit shorter of a shelf life in fantasy. Maybe we're not expecting him to be a viable fantasy quarterback into his late 30s. So maybe you can factor that into your argument when you're talking it out with the owner that has Lamar Jackson. Try to get him to come off of him, or maybe give up a little bit, or ask for a little bit less for him, something along those lines. If there's a way you can get Lamar Jackson on your team, do it. What's going on, Kyle? How you doing? You ended up making that trade. Mac Jones, Darnell Mooney, and Jacoby Myers for Ayuk 112 and a mid-late 2023. 2023 first, I'm guessing. I mean, I gotta admit, I don't love giving up Darnell Mooney. But in order to get something back, you gotta give up something good. Mac Jones, I don't hate giving up on. I feel like his ceiling is QB 12, maybe QB 8, if he has a Ryan Tannehill-like career. But I feel like that's his ceiling. Because for a few years there, Ryan Tannehill was QB 7, QB 8. You knew he was never going to be ranked any higher than that. Yo, what's going on, AB? How you doing, man? But he was going to be steady, Ryan Tannehill. And I feel like That's basically the same thing you're going to be getting from Mac Jones. Pure pocket passer, mobile enough, but not somebody who's ever going to be confused with a rushing quarterback. And those guys have ceilings in fantasy. So Mac Jones, ceiling low-end QB1, but probably going to be on the borderline there for his entire career. QB1, maybe QB2. I could see him having a career kind of like Derek Carr, maybe a little bit better, a little bit more steady. But giving up Darnell Mooney hurts. And I don't care about giving up Jacoby Myers. I really don't. Some fantasy analysts love Jacoby Myers. Undrafted free agent. Came in, relative target hog for them. But he never scored any touchdowns. And if there's one thing the Patriots are going to do, outside of getting another cornerback, because it doesn't look like they're going to be holding on to J.C. Jackson, they're going to try to get weapons around Mac Jones. Because they didn't have any this past season outside of really Hunter Henry. So Jacoby Myers should fall down the depth chart. And for Ayuk, who I believe is only 23 years old, the 112, I mean, you could get a George Pickens, a David Bell there, maybe Olave Falls, somebody like that. In a mid to late 2023, I'm guessing first. I don't hate that. Because a mid to late 2023 first could still get you a pretty good quarterback in next year's draft. DJ Ugalele, somebody like that. Should still get you a pretty decent running back. The running back class next year, whole lot better than this year's class. In this year's class, you're looking at Breece Hall, Isaiah Spiller, maybe Kenneth Walker, and then not a whole lot else. Some people are big fans of Kyron Williams. I like him a lot, but we got to see how he tests out on the combine to see whether or not he's really projected to be more than a pass-catching back at the next level. In next year's draft, you got 5 running backs that should be real good NFL backs. And in the mid-rounds, in the mid-first range, you could get a Tank Bigsby. You could get a Zach Evans. Corman. There's a running back named Corman. I forget his first name. Zach Charbonnet might be able to rise to the occasion after staying in college one more season. He might be in the mix there. Then, I mean, that's not even mentioning who's that back there? That was really good. Anyways, those are the guys that are available in the mid to late 2023 first round range. And if you can come away from this year's draft and next year's draft, along with Ayuk, looking at George Pickens, maybe a Kyron Williams, and Zach Evans at quarterback or at running back, DJ Ugalele at quarterback if you're in Superflex, I think that's good for you. I think that's at least coming out with equitable value. And you might have even came up the winner there. But you're really not going to know on this trade until you really see what those draft picks turn into. It might be tough next year looking at what Darnell Mooney's going to do. But I think you can get if you get a George Pickens, if you get a Chris Olave, if you get even a David Bell, he can be an equitable wide receiver if you compare him to Darnell Mooney. He could even give you more. So yeah, I don't hate that trade. You just got to be patient. Patient. Harrison, hard to believe the 49ers would give up so much to sit him on the bench 2 years on his rookie contract. I mean, yeah. But maybe they were expecting him to be a little bit more polished coming into the NFL than he was. Maybe they did all the homework on him, got caught up in the draft hype, went all in on Trey Lance, and then he got there and he was so far behind Jimmy G that maybe they're forced to sit him on their bench for 2 years. Stranger things have happened. I believe Aaron Rodgers sat for 2 seasons. We haven't seen that recently. Patrick Mahomes only sat for 1 season. But yeah, I mean, if he sits 2 years on his rookie contract, it's not ideal. I'm sure the GM and the team and the coaching staff, they were all expecting him to come in a little bit more polished, a little bit more ready to play. If it's not the case, wait until it is, so you don't ruin the guy's headspace with a whole bunch of losing, you know? So yeah, I don't hate it for the Niners, and I do believe if they can't rely on him right now, they have a ready-made team. They should go out and get somebody who has a little bit higher of a floor, because we've seen this team bring Jimmy G pretty close, if not to the Super Bowl, in multiple years of late. And Jimmy G, not all that great. Last year, Jimmy G was the QB 17 in fantasy. And we all know he's not that great of a real-life quarterback. If Trey Lance isn't there yet, even at QB 17 level, that's not very inspiring. But it's not a death knell on his outlook moving forward. Honestly, again, he's in my list for a reason. Right now might be a buy low window for Trey Lance. Might be. And AB, thanks for joining us. I'm sorry school's kicking your butt, man. Yeah, okay. Kyle, it was your mid-2023 first. Again, I like the 2023 draft class. A mid-2023 first has more value than a mid-2022 first right now. And the wide receivers are going to be just as good next year. Kayshon Boutte, Smith and Jigba. It's going to be real good next year. The wide receivers are going to be good next year too. So whereas this year you're really looking at maybe 7 prospects who are true number 1 talents, true first round talents. Next year you're probably looking at 12, 13 true first round talent players. So I like the 2023 first. If you can turn that 112 into something, I might consider doing that. I might. Depending on who falls to you, maybe you wait until the draft to see if you can get peak value. But yeah. Kyle, your wide receivers are Chase, Metcalf, Waddle. Okay. I don't hate that at all, man. That's running strong at your top 3. And you also have Fields and Lance. So you got a really good young team. Should be set up for the future. So yeah, I really don't mind. With that in mind, really don't mind that trade. That'll probably end up working out well for you. AB, you picked up an orphan dynasty team. Those are always interesting. The team has Trey Lance and Trevor Lawrence. Okay. Little iffy on both, looking for some insight on what I can get for either of those. Now's not the time to be trading away Trey Lance if you have him, because you shouldn't be knee-jerking. You shouldn't make a knee-jerk move based off of this report, because nothing is set in stone yet. It's just Adam Schefter. He's gotten things wrong. Until you have any concrete answers on Trey Lance, he's a hold for me. And even then, even if you get some concrete evidence that they're not all in on him starting in 2023, I believe he's still a hold. Because come 2024, he could have the upside, the future upside, or at least the growth potential to grow into a player like Josh Allen. So, yeah, I'm not looking to trade Trey Lance. And Trevor Lawrence, he's finally got a stable coaching staff. Urban Meyer was the opposite of a stable coaching staff. Doug Peterson has won a Super Bowl. And by all accounts, polling the people in Philadelphia, nobody in Philadelphia thinks that the woes that this team stumbled upon after winning that Super Bowl were Doug Peterson's fault. They point to more to Howie Roseman, their GM, and the people in their front office. They don't put Philadelphia's struggles post Super Bowl on Doug Peterson. So I like the Doug Peterson hire for Trevor Lawrence. And again, Trevor Lawrence did not look good last year. He looked like bottom third in the NFL quarterback. And that was despite him coming into the league with comparisons to Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck. But you got to look at his weapons. He lost DJ Chark, who wasn't all that great of a wide receiver to begin with. He lost DJ Chark earlier in the season. He was operating as the de facto number one there. Not the strongest number one wide receiver in the league. Young showed potential with Gardner Minshew, but not up there with your Jamar Chases, your Justin Jeffersons, your CeeDee Lambs. Nobody's confusing DJ Chark with any of them. Marvin Jones, I like Marvin Jones. He has always outperformed probably where you got him pretty much every year. But he's not a number one wide receiver. He never was. Laviska Shenault, cool little gadget player. The fantasy community was probably expecting too much from him. Trevor Lawrence also lost Travis Etienne, who was going to be his RB1 and his pass-catching back. Had to rely on James Robinson, who isn't bad, but he's not Travis Etienne. He's not a pass-catching back. They also didn't have a tight end there until about halfway through the season when they traded for Dan Arnold, because the Tim Tebow experiment did not work out. They also had, at the end of the year, Laquan Treadwell, who I believe is 29 years old and has never done anything in the NFL. And I believe Jamal Agnew, the guy that they brought in halfway through the year, was a converted cornerback from the Detroit Lions. So Trevor Lawrence had nothing to work with. The Jaguars have, I believe it's top 2 cap space next year. Let's check this out. Yep. They have $57 million in cap space. They're going to be spenders in free agency. And their number one priority should be to surround Trevor Lawrence with as many weapons as possible. They could go out and get a Chris Godwin. They could go out and get a Allen Robinson. They could go out and get a Mike Williams. If they wanted to, they could bring back DJ Chark. They can get a Evan Ingram. Not that I'm super high on Evan Ingram, but one of these tight ends who are in this tight end free agent group. David Njoku, Evan Ingram, OJ Howard, if they want to go that route. Dalton Schultz, who was just the tight end 3 with Dallas. They should be able to overpay in free agency to surround Trevor Lawrence with weapons. So I wouldn't be selling Trevor Lawrence either. I think he's going to have a much better season this year compared to where he was last year. Coaching is better. Coaching staff will be better. The run game might improve because ETN might be a little bit more electric, a little bit more versatile than a James Robinson. So yeah, I wouldn't be iffy on either of these guys. You just have to be patient. Neither of them showed you what you wanted them to show you year one, but that might just be the case for pretty much every quarterback in that class. I mean, Zach Wilson didn't show you what you wanted from him year one. Trey Lance didn't show him what you wanted from him year one. Justin Fields didn't show anybody what people wanted him from year one, and neither did Trevor Lawrence. They could all be year 2 breakout guys, which is fine. You just have to be patient with them. So I wouldn't be rushing to get any of those guys off my team. And Kyle, you now have 4 2023 firsts. Hey, good for you. I'm trying to get there. I have 3, and if I can trade and do a 4th one, like halfway through the year, something like that, get rid of another running back. I'm in a full rebuild in the league that I'm talking about. So yeah, man, I'm trying to get as many 2023 firsts and seconds as possible. Because again, whereas this draft has 7, I would say around 7 true bona fide first round talents, next year is probably going to have 12, 13, 14, maybe 15. So if you luck into getting one of those high seconds next season, you're going to be reaping some benefits of them before long. Kyle Nohe, what's going on? Good to see you. Good to see you. How's everything going in Hawaii, man? And Kyle, the way I see it, I have youth at wide receiver and quarterback. If Lance does sit, I'll tank for the 1-on-1 in 2023. Even better for me. Hey, yeah, that's the way to look at it. That's the way to look at it. I mean, if you are rebuilding, going after guys who are going to be stuck in an IR spot for half the season is a good move. Going after guys who are going to be sitting on your bench all season but could be really good for you in 2023, 2024, good moves. That's why I kind of like that Deshaun Watson trade from Harrison. Because especially if you're in a rebuild, Harrison, Deshaun Watson's going to be better, I believe, in the future for you than Zach Wilson at the most important position in Superflex. So if that costs you a 2023 first to upgrade from Zach Wilson to somebody who should be a top 6 quarterback as soon as he hits the field again, it's a good move. I would feel like it was worth the risk too. But moving on from quarterbacks in my list of guys to overpay for, going to wide receivers. First one up is Michael Pittman Jr. He's 25 years old, had 129 targets last season in his sophomore season. But to look at Michael Pittman and to really see his true value, you got to break up his season. Because from weeks 1 to 3, Carson Wentz was QB 24, which resulted in Michael Pittman Jr. being wide receiver 37. He wasn't good through 3 weeks. From weeks 4 to 9, Carson Wentz flipped the script. He was QB 7, and Pittman ended up being wide receiver 5 from weeks 4 to week 9. And then Carson Wentz reverted to bad Carson Wentz from weeks 10 to week 18. He was QB 21, and it resulted in Michael Pittman Jr. being wide receiver 35. Now, Carson Wentz is just bad, and that's why Michael Pittman didn't finish as a wide receiver 1. But we got 2 reports, one from The Athletic, one from ESPN. The Athletic's report is from Bob Kravitz. He said it would be, and I quote, virtually impossible for the Colts to bring back Carson Wentz in 2022. And Chris Mortensen from ESPN reports Carson Wentz will probably be traded or released before the start of a new league year. So, Carson Wentz ain't going to be there next year. He's not going to be the quarterback for Michael Pittman Jr. He won't be holding back Michael Pittman Jr. They should be able to find an upgrade without too much trouble. They have $35 million in cap space. They can land a QB through the draft or through free agency. The team is ready-made, though. Just like the 49ers. They have a great O-line. They got a really good defense. The Indianapolis Colts are a win-now team. So they're dark horse candidates to land a Aaron Rodgers, to land a Russell Wilson. But even if somebody like Jimmy Garoppolo goes there, maybe they give Mitchell Trubisky a chance. Maybe they find their way to Kenny Pickett in the draft. Maybe they find their way to Malik Willis in the draft. Pittman's going to be a value because I see no way in which the Colts have a quarterback situation that is worse than what they had last year. Pittman is a value, even if you have to pay up for him, considering he's a young wide receiver. Due to his age and the fantasy consensus on him, you are probably going to have to pay a lot. But an overpay today might look like a bargain down the road because he has the ceiling of a Mike Evans year to year. Similar profile. Mike Evans is a Hall of Fame wide receiver. So yeah, I expect Michael Pittman to be a top 12 wide receiver as soon as they get a good quarterback for the Colts. Or at least a competent quarterback for the Colts. Because when they had a top 12 quarterback from weeks 4 to weeks 9, in Carson Wentz when he was QB7, Michael Pittman Jr. was wide receiver 5. The team will be without Jack Doyle and Mo Alley Cox. T.Y. Hilton will probably retire. We know you can't expect much from Zach Pascal, Paris Campbell. I believe Nyheim Hines, I'm not sure, I'd have to check this. I believe Nyheim Hines is a restricted free agent. So there are a lot of receiving options for the Colts that have question marks as well. So even if they go in to the draft and they get another wide receiver to play opposite Michael Pittman to replace T.Y. Hilton, I expect them to do that. And even if Kylan Granson comes in and becomes their Trey Burton, I expect that to happen. Michael Pittman's still going to be a value because I don't believe anybody they go out and get is going to relegate him to a secondary role in this offense. He's going to be the wide receiver 1 in this offense. And if you got to pay up to get him, I'd feel comfortable with it. I'm actually trying to orchestrate a trade for him right now. So yeah, he's somebody I really like. But before I go on to the next person on my list, let me check out this chat. Harrison, if I'm a contender, I would overpay for Javonte Williams. He's 21. I think he's a better bet than other young wide receiver or running backs. Yeah, that's the consensus. Javonte Williams was somebody that last week Nick and I were kind of talking about maybe being a sell right now. Because you look around the landscape in Dynasty, he's looked at as a top 5 Dynasty running back right now. Melvin Gordon might come back. They might draft a running mate to play with him because in college he played alongside Michael Carter. He was not a full-time back in college. We don't know if he can be a full-time back in the pros. He wasn't this past season. He played the entire season with Melvin Gordon, who outproduced him and would be a cheap option for them to bring back. Honestly, I think Javonte, if you have him, is you should be considering selling him. Now, that depends on your team makeup. That depends on if you have depth at running back. And that depends what you can get for him. The point about selling Javonte Williams is that you should be able to get a whole lot. You should be able to sell him for top 4 running back value. You should be able to get a couple of firsts and a good, decent running back. But I wouldn't be selling him unless you can get that, and I probably wouldn't be on the buying end of one of those trades. Because I like Javonte Williams. Super young, super talented. I just think you got to pay too much to get him. Could he be worth it? Sure. If Aaron Rodgers goes there and they don't draft or sign a running mate for him, the sky could be the limit. He could be RB1 in 2023. But there are other factors there. That's a lot of projection. And considering the consensus on him is that he is around Dynasty RB4, I'd probably sell him. See if you can downgrade to like a J.K. Dobbins and a couple of firsts Travis Etienne and a couple of firsts, something like that. Do I believe he's a better back than those players? Yes. But I believe in getting a guy for peak value. And I don't know if Javonte Williams ever rises above RB4. And he's higher than that for some people. For some people, he's their RB3, RB2. So, it depends what you can get for him. If you have him, he would be a speculative sell-high candidate for me. And I wouldn't overpay to get Javonte Williams because there's a chance he's a timeshare back again. Is he going to be super electric? Yes. But if Melvin Gordon goes back there, or if they draft another running back to basically spell him for the rest of his career in Denver, which isn't out of the question, his value tumbles. And instead of a top 4 Dynasty running back, you're looking at a top 12 Dynasty running back. And then you can't get nearly the asking price that you normally would right now for him then. But thanks for the question, Harrison. If you have any more regarding some running backs, let me know. We'll be going over some running backs shortly. And Kyle, you said I say tank because in San Fran, Fields and Lance, in Superflex, Fields and Lance of Lance sits. Hello 101 and 201. Yeah, man. Yeah. Yeah, and I don't see any. I'm not one of those owners or managers in Dynasty leagues that sees tanking as a bad thing. Now, if you're not setting lineups, that's a bad thing. But if you just have not the greatest starting roster and you're rostering players that won't play for a full year for a better chance at 101, 102, 103, I see no problem with that. I see no problem with tanking in Dynasty because the point is, tanking, you expect to be better in 2-3 seasons. So I see no problems with it. Excuse me. And you love Pittman? Yeah, I do too. I don't know if you can, if you can get him low right now, hey, good on you. I can't. Everywhere I'm asking for him, I gotta pay up for him. But he's a guy that even if you have to pay up for him due to the fact that he is young, I would, because he has top 6 upside. He does. And yeah, man, if the Colts didn't kill Luck, Michael Pittman would be a top 6 Dynasty wide receiver. I firmly believe that. With the weapons they have, the lack of weapons they have in the pass game right now, if they had Andrew Luck still, yeah, we're looking at a top 6 Dynasty asset at wide receiver. And Jerry, what's going on? Rodgers stays in Green Bay, right? There was some speculation on that because in a report that came out from Brian Gutekunst, somebody was reporting that he was talking about how he'd been in contact with Aaron Rodgers regarding re-signing their quarterback's coach, and he referenced that in an interview. Now, the thought process here is, why would he reference and be talking with Aaron Rodgers about re-signing their current or last year's quarterback coach if Aaron Rodgers had no interest in re-signing with the Green Bay Packers? The situation's still up in the air for me. For a long time, I would say it was about 50-50 he was going to stay in Green Bay or leave. Then he put out that weird tweet after he went to India or something about how he was thanking everybody in Green Bay and thanking his current wife or fiance right now, Shailene Woodley. That was a cryptic post. And the thought process on that was he's never done a social media post like this. He's probably out. This is his way of saying goodbye, since he's never done that in the past. Maybe that was a ploy on his part to try to get the ball moving for Gutekunst to re-sign their old quarterbacks coach. You never know. With Aaron Rodgers and his whole situation, you never really know. Right now, I still feel like you gotta wait. Not only is his situation up in the air, Davante Adams' situation is up in the air. Now, they did just extend Kenny Clark, which freed up, I believe, about $13 million on the cap. So when they're making moves like that, you would expect that to be maybe a move to free up enough cap space to get Davante Adams on a one-year deal. Bring him back for one more season. Run it back one more time with Aaron Rodgers. Possibly. But the situation's still too fluid for me to say anything definitively. I don't know if he stays in Green Bay. And I don't know if he leaves. My thought process on him changes from day to day at this point. After the tweet, I thought he was leaving. Now, after this report that he's been talking with the GM, and the GM is doing things actively under the understanding that if he gets these things done, Aaron Rodgers will stay. Now I think he could stay, but I really don't know. We really got to wait until we hear it from him. Really do. And Harrison, thanks. You have him in your main league, so you're super biased. Hey, if I had him, it would take a lot from me to sell him, but I would be dangling him because peak value. I know he's super young. Wide receiver or running back 4 though in Dynasty right now. Consensus. On wide receivers, you feel like people are super high on Elijah Moore. Is that someone you would overpay for, or Rashad Bateman? Here's the thing about Elijah Moore. I believe they're going to bring in another wide receiver to compete. Before Elijah Moore got there, they tried to bring in Denzel Mims. That didn't work. They tried to bring in Corey Davis. That didn't work. Elijah Moore worked. But Corey Davis is coming back. And there's speculation that they're in on Drake London. They're in on Treylon Burks. They like Garrett Wilson. There's speculation that they're going to sign another running back in the draft. Or a wide receiver in the draft. At which point, then, I try to buy Elijah Moore. Because there's going to be another person there. You can say, hey, they just drafted Treylon Burks. Elijah Moore isn't going to be their wide receiver 1. Can I buy him for you a little cheaper? You wouldn't say it in those words, but that would be the thought process. Now, are there going to be too many mouths to feed for a quarterback we're not completely sold on in Zach Wilson? If Corey Davis comes back and he's not a focal point in the offense, but utilized a little bit more than he was last year, and healthier than he was last year, and they bring in somebody else, is Elijah Moore then going to be not phased out of the offense, but at least not a focal point? Doesn't have the ceiling to be wide receiver 2 over a significant stretch of the year, because he was wide receiver 2 for a significant stretch of the year last year. He blew up. But the only other wide receiver that they were running out there that was doing anything was Braxton Berrios. Because, again, Corey Davis was out. Denzel Mims couldn't have been relied upon. Keelan Cole couldn't be relied upon. And Jamison Crowder was hurt and couldn't be relied upon. I really like Elijah Moore. But I don't think now's the time to buy him. Wait until the draft. After the draft, then that might be the buy window for him. Compounding this issue is the fact that the Jets have $48 million in cap space. So they have enough cap space to sign an Allen Robinson or a Mike Williams or a Chris Godwin or somebody like that. So that could further compound the situation for Elijah Moore if either of those things happen. Draft pick, wide receiver in free agency, then's the time to go out and trade for Elijah Moore. Because he was very good last year, but he's also kind of an undersized wide receiver. Do I expect that to really factor into the valuation of him moving forward? Not really. But they're not going to roll into 2023 with him as their primary weapon because he's only 5'9". He always projected as a secondary piece in this offense. So buy him once he becomes that, because he can still be a valuable wide receiver too for your fantasy team. But you won't have to pay 21-year-old, 22-year-old future wide receiver 1 prices. That's what I would do. And Bateman, hey man, if you can buy Bateman right now, I don't hate that. I don't think the Ravens are going to be adding anybody in the pass game to their offense. I feel like their offense is pretty solidified. They got Hollywood Brown. They got Rashad Bateman on the other side. They drafted Tylan Wallace last year too. And they have Miles Boykin there and Devin Duvernay they could re-sign. I believe they're getting to the point in their careers where they're up for a contract renewal. They could re-sign there. But their offensive core has been pretty fleshed out. Mark Andrews ain't going anywhere. I don't believe Hollywood Brown is going anywhere. Rashad Bateman should be the focal point from the wide receiver perspective of that offense moving forward. Yes, he's not going to be the number 1 target. It's always going to be Mark Andrews. But remember, Rashad Bateman missed 5 games last year. He was out for the first 5 games. Came right in, 6 targets, 7 targets. 3-game stretch of 8 targets straight. He wasn't doing the most with those targets, but he was still getting acclimated to the NFL. He wasn't a touchdown machine. Really, that was Hollywood Brown. At least until Lamar Jackson got hurt. But I like Rashad Bateman. He's technically, I wouldn't say he's a buy low, but if you're buying him now, you're buying him before he popped off, or before he pops off, and I think he can pop off. I think Rashad Bateman is a solid buyer right now. If you can capitalize on some of this rookie hype with some of these wide receivers, say you have the 112, right? Who traded for the 112 earlier? It was Kyle. Say you have the 112, and you're looking at a David Bell, George Pickens. If you can trade that 112 to somebody who's high on one of those players, maybe you're in Superflex and the quarterback falls, somebody's high on one of the quarterbacks there, maybe Kyron Williams falls and somebody's really hype on Kyron Williams. If you can get out of that 112 for Rashad Bateman plus, maybe Rashad Bateman in the second next year, something like that, I think that would be smart. Because I don't think we've seen the best from Rashad Bateman thus far. He came into the league last year as somebody who didn't have elite traits, but he was just really good at everything. And he showed that. When he was on the field last year, he showed that he was good at everything. He also showed that he doesn't really have an elite trait yet. Could he develop one? Maybe. But I still think he can be a valuable wide receiver for you moving forward. And I was just looking today at wide receiver rankings in Dynasty. I really like one of the podcasts that kind of inspired this podcast, or this live stream, was the Roto Underworld service. And they right now have Rashad Bateman at Dynasty wide receiver 15, which is higher than I thought he would be. But just goes to show you, smart fantasy analysts out here who are doing the work and really digging into the analytics of what happened in 2021, still view Rashad Bateman as a very good wide receiver. They actually had him higher ranked than Elijah Moore. It was interesting to me. I wasn't expecting that when I was looking at the rankings. But Rashad Bateman, technically a buy low, because he didn't blow the doors off of anybody last year. He was just real good, real solid. And I believe he has room to grow. So there you go. Yeah, I like Bateman. You'll have to spend less on him right now than you would on Elijah Moore. And certain smart fantasy analysts have him higher than Elijah Moore. Jaws, does Zach Wilson have a shot to develop? Yeah. Yeah, he once that whole Zach White situation played out, where he was benched for Zach White and then for Joe Flacco, and then he came back, he looked pretty decent. He had one game where he ran for over 100 yards. He didn't look bad. And again, that was with Elijah Moore was on the shelf at that point, I believe. Jamison Crowder was out. Corey Davis was out. They don't have a tight end. They sent Chris Herndon over to the Vikings, and they tried Kenny Yeboah out there, who was a rookie last year. Didn't work. Zach Wilson might just need some bona fide real weapons, and might just need those weapons to stay healthy. Now, he could just be a bust. But he could just have been held back by his weapons, just like Trevor Lawrence was held back by his weapons. So, something to think about when you're thinking about Zach Wilson. He looked really bad for long stretches, but he was also playing with Braxton Berrios as his number one wide receiver for long stretches. And yeah, Harrison, I think Moore could be a great wide receiver on a team based on his size. Yeah. Now, he also compares to a Darnell Mooney, size-wise. And I think the same thing about Darnell Mooney. I think Darnell Mooney can be a great wide receiver too on a team. But I believe that the Bears are going to go out and try to get their ex-receiver, their Allen Robinson replacement of the future, to pair with Darnell Mooney. So if you like Darnell Mooney, now's not the time to buy Darnell Mooney. The time to buy Darnell Mooney is after free agency, after the draft. Because the Bears have nobody else outside of Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet. And the Bears will want to surround Justin Fields with as many weapons as possible. That is how you maximize a young quarterback's growth. Just look at the Bengals. Everybody said they should go out. They have T. Higgins. They have Tyler Boyd. They have Joe Mixon. They should just go out and solidify that O-line. They said, F that. We're going Jamar Chase. And it brought him to a Super Bowl. What do you take away from that? Sometimes it's better just to go and get your young quarterback weapons. See what he can do offensively. And then fill in those spots later. So, yeah, the book's still out on Zach Wilson. Michael, what's going on? Just bought Kyler Murray and Claypool for D-Hop and Tannehill. Wow. That's a great trade. That's a great trade. Claypool, I believe, is still only 23 years old. D-Hop, I believe, is 30. And Kyler Murray's so much better than Ryan Tannehill. And younger. I know there's a lot of bad press going on around about Kyler Murray and his locker room interactions and his late season meltdowns and his recent playoff meltdown against the Rams, and the speculation that he could quit football and go on to baseball because he was drafted as a baseball player coming out of college. I don't put a lot of stock in all that. I think Kyler Murray's going to be back playing football next season for the Arizona Cardinals. And again, as long as he can stay healthy, Kyler Murray's a top 5 running back or quarterback. He's a rusher, good passer. I like Kyler Murray a lot. The only thing he's going to have to contend with this next year is he doesn't have a lot of weapons. He will have lost A.J. Green unless they re-sign him. He will have lost Christian Kirk. He will have lost, at least as it stands right now, Zach Ertz, James Conner, Chase Edmonds. So they will need to restock their cupboard at weapons to pair with Kyler Murray. So we might not see that QB3, QB2 upside. He might be a little bit lower of a QB1 for long stretches of the year. But he could also have to just do more, because they won't have the playmakers to take that burden off of his plate. We saw it from Lamar Jackson this past year. Took away his 2 running backs. He responded with passing more than he ever had in his career and running more than he ever had in his career. Could be the same deal for Kyler Murray. Could he stand up to the punishment of a 17-game season if he has to take on more of a burden in this offense? I'm not sure. But he's still top 5 in fantasy points per game when he's healthy. So I like Kyler Murray a lot. And Claypool, he's been held back by having to deal with Ben Roethlisberger, who had a dead arm, and Mason Rudolph, who just ain't good over his career. Claypool, with a good quarterback, or at least a quarterback who can connect downfield, could once again return to game breaker status. Remember, in his rookie year, he had a game where he caught 4 touchdowns. He has that type of ability, still real young. Now, he had some off-the-field concerns. There was that Instagram video that came out where he was caught on film beating up somebody outside of a restaurant. People have labeled him a diva inside the Steelers locker room. He had some hiccups last year where he wasn't very aware of game situations when he was celebrating. Went through some growing pains over the past year. Can he learn from them? Sure, he's young. He's only 23 years old. And as soon as he gets a better quarterback who can, again, connect with Claypool, downfield, he could return to at least high-end wide receiver 2 value. And he has the athletic profile to be DK Metcalf. He does. He just needs a quarterback that can get to him. And he needs to get his head on straight. But D-Hop, devalued asset, older, wide receiver 10 when healthy, but then was unhealthy for a lot of the year last year. And Tannehill's kind of, when he was great, his ceiling was quarterback 7. I don't even know where he was this past year. Quarterback 16. And I don't really expect him to get it back on track, because his number 2 wide receiver is a broken down Julio Jones. And he's on a run-first team that runs through Derrick Henry. So, Tannehill, from a fantasy perspective, not the most enticing option. People were higher on him last year. Kind of fell off. I don't really expect him to regain his past dominance. So you got off of 2 assets that were slowly declining for 2 assets that should appreciate over time. I like that a lot. Yeah, Harrison, more could benefit from the addition of an X receiver. Jaws Duvernay is always balling. I was sad that he went to the Ravens. Yeah, he's been buried on that depth chart. He's been held back by the fact that they're not a pass-first offense, or at least weren't until this past year when they basically drafted his replacement in Rashad Bateman. It's tough. Sometimes that happens in the NFL. The guy can be real good in college, goes to the Ravens, an organization that can't quite maximize his what he brings to the table, falls down the depth chart as a result, and he never realizes his potential in the NFL. Happens. And yeah, Harrison, It is crazy that Bateman was ranked 15th. But I ain't lying to you. And they do a lot of analytics work. There's got to be a reason that they have him that high. Because he didn't show it in 2021. Let's hope that he shows it in 2022. Jaws, how about Rager? Not a huge fan of Rager. I'm not the biggest fan of Quintez Cephas either, but Nick, my co-host, who's usually on, his family's visiting, so he ain't on with me today. He's really high on Quintez Cephas. He has Quintez Cephas on a lot of Dynasty rosters. And whenever he's brought up, Nick mentions that he was kind of on a hot streak to start the year, and then he got injured and was out for the year. But he was projected to be a starting X receiver for them, and as it stands right now, is projected to be a starting X receiver opposite Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now, I expect the Detroit Lions to bring somebody else in, whether that's through free agency or through the draft, to compete for targets at the wide receiver position. But Quintez Cephas could still see a lot of work in 3 wide sets. He's young, and he has a lot more upside than Jalen Reagor. Jalen Reagor just isn't that good. I know he's young. You probably drafted him a few years ago. You're hoping he was going to turn into something. I don't think Jalen Reagor turns into anything. The Philadelphia Eagles are a run-first offense with a running quarterback who doesn't have a strong arm. And they have, at least in the pecking order from a receiving perspective, Devontae Smith ahead of him, Dallas Goedert ahead of him, and honestly, Kenny Gainwell's ahead of him on the pecking order. And at times last year, there were a couple of wide receivers. Quez Watkins played ahead of Jalen Reagor at times last year. And really, I expect the Eagles to get a running back through the draft. They have 3 first-round picks in the teens this year. I think it's 15, 16, and 17. Something close like that clustered together. They got 3 of them. A lot of people have speculated that they're going to trade for Russell Wilson. I think that would be real stupid of them. It wouldn't be a smart move for the Eagles to mortgage 3 first-round draft picks. Even though they're mid-first-round draft picks, 3 first-round draft picks for a quarterback who, while he did win a Super Bowl in his youth, ain't young and ain't going to bring that current roster to the Super Bowl without some help. They would be better served just running out Jalen Hurts' contract this year, drafting 3 players in the first round, and then maybe drafting a quarterback next year in a draft that should be flush with high-end quarterbacks. That would be the smart thing for Philadelphia to do. And I think that's the route they go. So I expect somebody who falls, whether that's David Bell, George Pickens, Jameson Williams, somebody like that, to be an Eagle. And thus to start over Jalen Reagor. It sucks that you drafted Reagor over Justin Jefferson. That sucks. And I'm sorry. It's gotta hurt. But I would be cutting bait. If you can ship him off to somebody for a 3rd-round pick in 2023, something like that. Honestly, I wouldn't feel bad doing that. Because I don't think Jalen Reagor is going to turn into anything. I don't. He is going to be like Devin Duvernay. They're going to draft people to start over him, and he's going to fall down to the depth chart until he's basically has no value. He might go to another team like Zay Jones did on the Raiders, and Nelson Aguilar, a former Eagle, did on the Raiders. Pop off for 1 year, then go to another team, disappear. Because the Eagles have been bad at drafting wide receivers outside of Devonta Smith. Remember, they drafted Jordan Matthews. they drafted? There's a guy before Jalen Reagor. I forget. They're just not good at. They're not good at drafting wide receivers. Devonta Smith was kind of an outlier for them. Even when they had Alshon Jeffrey, he was a cast-off from another team. So yeah, cut bait on Reagor. See if you can get a third, something like that. Sometimes you got. That's the kind of move you got to do. I know it sucks. It is what it is. CXK, what's going on? You wish they would give Hurts more time to develop? I think they will. They'll give him one more season. They'll put some more weapons around him, considering, yes, again, they have 3 first-round picks. They will get another weapon around him. They'll probably shore up the defense as well. Make the overall roster top to bottom a little better. I think right now they have about $20 million in cap space. So there's room to grow for this Eagles squad. And honestly, the division is wide open because the Cowboys seem to shoot themselves in the foot more often than not. And the Giants, same thing. The Commies, Commanders, the Manders, whatever you're calling them these days, same thing. So, yeah, I think they're going to give Hurts more time to develop. I don't think they're going after Russell Wilson. Jaws, I'm sorry, I got the hiccups right now. I don't know why this is happening. But you have Sutton everywhere. Hope they get a decent QB. As time passes, I feel like maybe it's just today. But I don't feel like they're getting Aaron Rodgers. Now, they could get a Russell Wilson. I don't really feel like that's in the cards for them either. I think they're going to end up with one of these rookies. Considering this isn't a very good quarterback draft class, I'm not too hype on any of the rookies that they could get. So I don't know if Sutton gets a chance to realize his potential with the QB upgrade. Could they find somebody that's better than who they've had over the past 2 seasons? Teddy Bridgewater, Drew Lock? Sure. Maybe Mitchell Trubisky goes there and he's a little bit of an upgrade. Realizes his potential that we when we saw him drafted high a few years ago. Because he was a decent fantasy quarterback with dual threat ability on the Bears for like 1 season, his second season, before Matt Nagy kind of killed all of his potential and he went elsewhere. He rehabbed it while he was in Buffalo behind Josh Allen. Maybe he can go somewhere like Denver and do a little bit better than the other quarterbacks who've been there over the past few seasons. That still wouldn't really instill a lot of confidence in me in Sutton. And that comes as a Sutton owner. I have him in 1 league. He should be a good dynasty asset. I can't unload him for anything substantial. I'm trying to just get a second for him in this year's draft. I can't even get a second for Sutton in this year's draft. Because he was that bad last year. And everybody's waiting for them to get a quarterback. I don't know if that happens this year. That might have to wait until next year. They might bridge quarterback for 1 year. And then try to get a quarterback in 2023. I think we're going to see a lot of teams approach the draft this way because I don't think a lot of NFL teams have a lot of faith in this upcoming quarterback draft class. Really, the only guy I see people being any sort of excited about is Malik Willis, who had a great Senior Bowl, somebody I really like, and Kenny Pickett, who just kind of seems like the best of the rest of the guys. So, hey, I hope Sutton gets a decent quarterback soon. They did just sign him to a contract extension. So as soon as his age 27 season in 2023, he could have a decent quarterback. I don't know if that happens this season. We might have to wait 1 more season to see prime Cortland Sutton again, which sucks. And Jaws, Jefferson struck me as one of those types of guys that you would turn into a total diva. And I guess I bought all that pre-draft hype. And that he would be stuck playing this as a slot receiver. I mean, it's what you got in Reagor. You got a guy that maxes out as a slot guy, and he's not even good at that. So, hey, man, I'm sorry. Sometimes we make the wrong choices. I wish we were doing this show around that time we probably would have advocated Justin Jefferson over Jalen Reagor, even though the NFL didn't go that route. I believe the Eagles drafted Reagor over Justin Jefferson. Not the best move. But we were at the end of the chat. I know this just turned into more of a discussion here of some of the questions in the chat and the players brought up in the chat. Then a discussion about guys that I had previously listed to go over that were overpays. So let me just run through a couple more of these guys here, and then we'll probably shut this stream down. I have Chris Godwin here. He's 26 years old. Was the wide receiver 2 overall in 2019 with Jameis in his second season while competing with future Hall of Famer Mike Evans for targets. Guy's got talent. And with Brady, while competing with Mike Evans, future Hall of Famer, Gronk, future Hall of Famer, Antonio Brown should be future Hall of Famer. For targets in 2021, he was wide receiver 17, but was wide receiver 12 in points per game, despite being wide receiver 41 in air yards. Which means he outperformed his allotted air yards. He missed 3 games from weeks 15, 16, and 17. But from weeks 1 to weeks 15, he was the wide receiver 9 in standard and the wide receiver 6 in PPR. So he was a wide receiver 1 despite competing with Evans and Gronk and Antonio Brown, which is pretty damn impressive. And when Brady lost him last year, the offense kind of stumbled and shut down. Now it was further affected by the unexpected loss of Antonio Brown halfway through that stretch of the season too. But when Brady specifically lost Chris Godwin, it looked like that offense took 1 or 2 steps back. Chris Godwin will have his pick of places to go to, and the teams with large amounts of cap space that I could see him being picked up by are the Chargers, who have $57 million in cap space. He could go and play with Herbert. Or the Jaguars, who need to put talent around Trevor Lawrence. They have $57 million in cap space. Both of those places, generational quarterbacks, or at least quarterbacks that are projected to be generational in Trevor Lawrence's case. The Colts, the Bears, and the Dolphins could also be in on him and have enough cap space to go and get Chris Godwin. He should have an upgrade, and those teams should have an upgrade at quarterback. Colts, we already talked about, should have an upgrade at quarterback. Fields and Tua should show growth from 2021 to 2022. So if he goes to any of those places, I think it's good, decent landing spots for Chris Godwin. I think now you can buy Chris Godwin now, and you can overpay for him. You should feel okay with overpaying for him because he's only 20. He will be only 26 when the season starts. That's technically before the age apex for wide receivers, which is 27. The future is bright for him. He's shown the ability to outperform allotted air yards. And, I mean, in points per game, when he plays, he's a wide receiver 1. So I really like Chris Godwin. Chances are you won't have to pay wide receiver 1 prices. He's been in the league, coming back from injury. Should be able to buy low on Chris Godwin. But even if you have to overpay, I would. DJ Moore, he's another guy I'll mention. I really like DJ Moore, always have. He's 24 right now still. We just mentioned Michael Pittman not too long ago. DJ Moore has been in the league for 2 more seasons, has 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons under his belt, and he is 6 months older than Michael Pittman, who has only been in the league for 2 seasons, only has 1 season of an 1,000-yard, where he hit the 1,000-yard threshold. Now, Michael Pittman has caught more touchdown passes. DJ Moore has 3 straight years of just catching 4 touchdowns. A lot of that has to do with the quarterbacks he was playing with. Teddy Bridgewater, you already know he's not good. Kyle Allen, we already know he's not good. PJ Tucker and Cam Newton, not good. And they vulture touchdowns rushing the ball. Even Sam Darnold, early in this season, was vulturing touchdowns running the ball, taking scoring opportunities away from DJ Moore. DJ Moore is a buy for me. And even if you have to overpay a little bit, I feel like DJ Moore is Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs for the Vikings, he was never treated like a number 1 wide receiver. If he would have been treated like a number 1 wide receiver at the expense of Adam Thielen, I believe he would have had the stats coming out of off of the Vikings that looked a lot more like DJ Moore. Because he was treated like the number 2 there, he didn't. The Bills were able to capitalize on that, and they basically traded him away for Justin Jefferson, or for the rights that ended up being Justin Jefferson. But I think DJ Moore is Stephon Diggs. I do. And he is a unrestricted free agent after this year. He is playing out his 5th-year option with the Carolina Panthers, and then he gets to choose his fate. Maybe they franchise tag him, but I think he can basically go elsewhere. He would have the pick of places to go in 2023, and if he chooses the right destination, his career could look a lot more like Stephon Diggs, where he goes to a high-powered offense who needs a number 1 wide receiver, and they treat him like a number 1 wide receiver, and he realizes the potential that we've all seen from him, but he hasn't been able to reach thus far, just based off the fact that he hasn't been playing with the best quarterbacks. I really like DJ Moore. Again, only 6 months older than Michael Pittman, so he's still really young. Younger than A.J. Brown. Hasn't quite reached A.J. Brown heights, but I think that's more quarterback woes than talent deficiency. So that rounds out wide receivers. We have 3 running backs here and 2 tight ends. We'll try to run through these quickly, but we got some comments in the chat. Jaws, throw the effing ball to Kirk, had me thinking the DV thing was correct. Or, throw the effing ball, Kirk. Yeah. I think he just got fired up. And, yo, P. Diddy, what's going on? P. Diddy, Papa Diddy Puff. Could Jerome Ford emerge as a top 3 running back in this draft? I don't think so. Top 5? Maybe. But I don't see Jerome Ford, outside of him becoming 2022's Elijah Mitchell, I don't see Jerome Ford vaulting ahead of Kenneth Walker, who's in my RB3 spot, and Kyron Williams, who's in my RB4 spot. I think he tops out as a top 5 running back in this year's draft. But I really like the talent. He's the guy that I'm going to be looking at in the late 2nd, early 3rd round of my Dynasty rookie drafts. He's the guy that I have penciled in on the spreadsheet that I have to keep my Dynasty teams in line. I really like Jerome Ford. He has as much upside as anybody not named Breece Hall, Isaiah Spiller, Kenneth Walker, or Kyron Williams in this draft. If I had the choice between Jerome Ford and Zamir White, it'd be tough for me. Might be going Ford. If I had the choice between, in a vacuum, without knowing where they're going to be landing, Jerome Ford or Brian Robinson, probably going Jerome Ford. He's a guy I really like. We have to see where he ends up. I've seen mocks where he ended up as the Atlanta Falcons' future RB1. If that comes to fruition, that would be a very interesting landing spot for him. and you would probably have to draft him in the second round if that were the case. If he goes to the Bills, my squad, I'd be very happy if he went to the Bills. There's a couple of landing spots for Jerome Ford that would be very interesting. If he went to the Cardinals, they don't have Chase Edmonds and James Conner anymore. Or at least as it stands right now, they're rolling into the offseason with only Eno Benjamin. If they drafted Jerome Ford, I'd be very excited about Jerome Ford. So he's a guy to keep your eye on for sure. And you know, probably going to keep, I got 5 guys here left on this list. I'm probably going to keep these for the next stream. We're probably going to roll this topic into next week's stream. So I can talk about these guys with Nick, because I feel like he's going to want to go over these guys. And we are coming up on 2 hours in this stream, or an hour and a half. But yeah, if you guys have any more comments, questions to throw in the chat, any more questions about rookies, let me know. We do have a rookie section on our page. If you go and check it out, our YouTube channel page, where Nick and I have gone over some of these rookies, so feel free to check them out. We don't have everybody. There are guys that we're missing. There are guys that we won't touch on until the combine. There are guys that maybe we won't touch on until we know their landing spot in the draft. So maybe a lot of these guys will get fleshed out. They'll get videos, proper videos, post-draft. But check out the ones that we have as it stands right now. We have Breece Hall, Isaiah Spiller, Kyron Williams. Nick did a bunch of videos on the wide receivers. I mean, he touched on Treylon Burks, Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Jameson Williams, George Pickens, David Bell. So check those out. We also have a video on Malik Willis. That one I like the way that one turned out. So check that one out. Check those videos out. And hey, we will be back next Tuesday. We're here every Tuesday at 6 p.m. EST and every Thursday at 6 p.m. EST. Usually my co-host Nick is here with me, so it's not just me rambling on. But come join us and join on the discussions of what we talk about. As always, we answer or try to answer every question in the chat. So if you have any questions, your questions will get answered. We will spend time on them. So this isn't like a couple of other fantasy live streams where you throw in your question in the chat and you can't get an answer. You'll get an answer here. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thanks for your questions. Thanks for being part of our off season. And hopefully we will see you next Tuesday. But have a good rest of your week.